Hey everybody, I'm at the Moose Jaw branch of the Saskatchewan Western Development Museum, where the theme happens to be transportation. As well, they have a display concerning 100 years of Saskatchewan history. Saskatchewan was declared a province in 1905. So now let's wander into 100 years of Saskatchewan history. Here we have the Prairie Splendor. A quilt is a creation that expresses the maker's imagination. Artistry and skill. Quilts can tell us something of the life and times of the maker, provide insight into society, document historic events. Some quilts are made to mark a special event, such is the case for Prairie Splendor, commemorating Saskatchewan's 100th anniversary. It was a first-place winner in the Western Development Museum Centennial Quilt Contest in 2005. Prairie Splendor. Sadly, this here exhibit is out of order. It originally did tell the prior to becoming a province history of the fur traders coming over and the Métis and the rebellion. I to this day say that Louis Riel was not a trader. He was doing what he should do for his people. He was a true leader. 100 ways to celebrate. 1905 special coin set was put out by the Royal Canadian Mint. Ring in 2005, chime in noon on January 1st. Little bell given out by the Saskatchewan 2005 committee. Shirts that were available. Lapel pin. Saskatchewan Power. Saskatchewan Centennial 2005. Cheers to you, proud to celebrate. Some nice big pins there, some other things. Memory, celebrate Saskatchewan. Next year, well, in 2 years, the province will be 120. Now we're discovering Saskatchewan. Saskatchewan becomes a province. Walter Scott, Saskatchewan's first premier. Territories 1 and 2 new provinces to be named Saskatchewan and Alberta will come into existence on the first day of July. Next, with Regina and Edmonton as their respective capitals provisionally. More than distance separated east from west, the territorial government did not control its land or natural resources and had no way to raise or borrow money. It looked to Ottawa for a place in Confederation. For 5 years, Territory Premier Haultain negotiated with the federal government the deal that was finally struck. Left the new province with a distinct disadvantage. Ottawa would not give up control over natural resources or crown land. When Ottawa named a premier, Haultain was passed over in favor of a liberal, Walter Scott. Right there, liberal. The almost unanimous vote was in favor of Regina for the seat of government, bringing to an end the struggle between Saskatoon and Regina for the honour. Though Saskatchewan had become a province in 1905 and Regina had been capital of Northwest Territories since 1883, it was not until 1906 that the city officially became the capital of the new province. Regina also began a street paving program that year. Saskatchewan may have been a pioneer society, But it was not without culture and learning. As early as 1906, the government gave matching grants to municipalities that set up free libraries. Laws were changed so that a married woman could own land, goods, and money in her own name. However, she still could not file for a homestead unless she was a widow or a deserted woman with children to support. The Provincial Telephone Company was founded in 1908. Saskatchewan government telephones would eventually become SaskTel. Regina had telephones as early as 1882. By 1905, there were 2,000 telephones in Saskatchewan City. Services for rural communities, rural municipalities, local improvement districts. Now you can spin these to get more information on different people. Farmer becomes Minister of Agriculture, which is the way it should be. Here's a stereoscope and stereo U-Carp from Turner's Logging Camp at Stump Lake, northwest of Prince Albert. The War on Tuberculosis. Metal sold to raise money for the Saskatchewan Anti-Tuberculosis League. Anti-Tuberculosis League has an army of workers busy in all sections of city selling tags for all prices. The person who fails to wear a tag is besieged by a swarm of young ladies who are selling the buttons. Saskatchewan Anti-Tuberculosis League raised funds by selling paper tags, buttons, and coronation medals between April and November of 1911. The SATB sold some 75,000 medals at tag days throughout the province. Saskatchewan Anti-Tuberculosis League, now known as the Lung Association of Saskatchewan, is Saskatchewan's oldest health charity. During the First World War, 42,000 Saskatchewan people, including First Nations and Métis, signed up. Farmers grew food for the troops. Women knitted socks and rolled bandages. Few went overseas as nurses. The war had a profound impact on Saskatchewan. The reform movement took root. Women demanded the vote. The temperance movement advanced the cause of prohibition, and women took over jobs while men were away at war. William Martin became premier in 1916, and Saskatchewan police took over law and order. Soldiers come home 1918 with the war ends. November, Saskatchewan soldiers look forward to coming home over the next couple of years. Communities in the province celebrated with parades and other festivities as their boys return. This wall is full of a lot of information on the history, 100 years of Saskatchewan, 1905 to 2005. 1920, Arthur Mahan became the premier, and Canadian aviation history was made in Regina. They boasted 4 Canadian aviation firsts. The first commercial pilot's license was granted to Roland Groom. The first air maintenance engineers was given to Robert McComb. Canada's first licensed commercial airplane was based in Regina. The city got the first license, air, harbor, or airport in 1920. In 1921, William Lloyd Mackenzie became Prime Minister. The Progressive movement made the biggest news of all in 1921. The Progressives elected 6 members to the legislature, and the federal election late in 1921, the Progressives won 65 seats. The Progressive Party made headlines when it won seats in both the provincial and federal elections. The party capitalized on the discontent and alienation felt by farmers in their dealings with Ottawa. Delegates to the Indian League of Canada, which had been formed 2 years earlier, met at Thunder Child Reserve. For many Saskatchewan delegates, this was a new experience and the beginning of political involvement. Charles Dunning became premier in 1922. (1923) there. They had the fair, including the 1926 prize list of the 18th annual fair of the Milestone Agricultural Society held at Milestone, Saskatchewan. 1926, Arthur Mahan became Prime Minister and James G. Gardner became Premier. Toy car as a Christmas gift in 1926. Here we have the Prairie Pro Hockey League scheduled. Teams from Regina, Saskatoon, Moose Jaw took to the ice in the new Pro Hockey League. Unfortunately, it lasted only one season. 1927, Saskatchewan celebrated the birth of Confederation. First Chevrolets rolled off assembly line at General Mills plant at its peak. 850 workers produced 150 cars a day. The plant closed in 1930 after opening in 1928. First grain was shipped overseas in 1929 after JTM Anderson became Premier. This first grain was shipped overseas through Hudson Bay. The new Hudson Bay Railway carried the prairie grain to Churchill, Manitoba, where it loaded on ships headed for England. It was reported to be cheaper and shorter than shipping through the Great Lakes. There he is, JTM Anderson, Premier. Saskatchewan is Canada's third largest province. 1931, and the Estevan riot claims 3 lives. You can go to my page and see a video about the Estevan riot. Again, they do have things here. Head, Heart, Hands and Health. If you live near Dubuque, Tantalion, Colgate in 1917, you might have been a member of the first Boys and Girls Clubs in Saskatchewan. The name was changed to 4-H in 1952. As you can see, a lot of different things here. 1917, free vaccines. Imagine your fear if your child got sick with diphtheria or smallpox. In 1970, you could protect your family from these dreaded diseases by getting the free vaccines provided by the government. Saskatchewan wheat pool and James G. Gardner becomes Premier again in 1934. In 1935, William Lyon Mackenzie King becomes Prime Minister, but also in that year, the very first person, Premier that was born in the province of Saskatchewan, William John Pattison, becomes Premier. Saskatchewan celebrates the King's Silver Jubilee. The royal family was big news in Saskatchewan as King V celebrated 25 years on the throne. Now, here at the museum, there is a little theater here. Let's walk in. So what a theater kind of looked like in the prairies back in the 1900s. A lobby car. Now showing, celebrating 75 years of the Western Development Museum. Now, 1962, the National Film Board of Canada uses WDM artifacts in the filming of the movie The Drylanders. 1962, the Western Development Museum was in the public eye, as we see in this Fred Davis interview, the curator George Shepard in Saskatoon. 1963, the Western Development Museum, North Battleford, moved to its new location at the junction of Highway 5, now 16, and 40 into the hangar moved to Mosbach. The official opening of Western Development North Battleford at its new location on May 25, 1963. 1963, the official opening of the Western Development Museum's North Battleford was part of the city of North Battleford's 1913-63 Jubilee celebrations. Storage hangar in Weyburn, similar to this one in Saskatoon, was vacated because transportation costs were thought to be too high. Motor artifacts were sold, bringing in $6,000. 1964, encouraged by the success of North Battleford, the city of Yorkton made provisions for a new Western Development Museum site. 1964, administrative staff were added in Saskatoon to assist operations of the three museums. 1965, the Western Development Museum appealed to Saskatoon City Council for a new site for a proposed new place. If you want to learn more about the history, 75 years history of the Western Development Museum, stop by one of their museums. Fiberglass mounted police officer was unveiled at Western Development in North Battleford as a joint project of the City of North Battleford's Tourism and Western Development Museum in 1966. The Heritage Village theme was adopted for Western Development North Battleford, while an immigration theme was adopted for the Western Development Museum Yorkton. Work on the Western Development Museum North Battleford Village continued with annual improvements in 1967. A little bit of the inside here of this theater. Fun and games in the 30s. Once again, I'm in the Moose Jaw Western Development Museum, where they have this celebration wall showing the history from 1905 to 2005 of the province of Saskatchewan. 1940, buy victory bonds. Award of Merit. In recognition of the most effective promotion in support of the 4th Victory Loan conducted by a community with a population of between 10,000 and 30,000, to the Government of Dominion of Canada has decreed that a Musquite bomber shall be inscribed with the name of Moose Jaw, Saskatchewan. On behalf of the Armed Services, we extend our sincere thanks. We will come back to go into here, to a separate thing that I'll do. In 1945, Tommy Douglas became Premier. Saskatchewan elects socialist government. The CCF party will now form the first socialist government in Canada. The move will be looked upon as an experiment by the rest of Canada. Canadian Commonwealth Federation, CCF, swept the victory with a huge majority, led by Baptist minister TC Tommy Douglas. The government introduced new social and economic programs that changed the face of Saskatchewan. Douglas's lasting legacy was his vision of accessible medical care for everyone. In 1945, the Second World War ended. Life and times in the 40s. 1948, Louis St. Laurent became Prime Minister. Tom Gage at the University of Saskatchewan. Sodium sulfate puts Chaplin on the map. Saskatchewan Arts Board encourages culture. Saskatchewan's Art Board was the first publicly funded arts organization of its kind in North America. In its first year, the board organized plays in 60 communities, and art from the National Gallery was circulated. Viewmaster was given as a gift to the Boyce family. We all remember those, don't we? Here we have an electric toaster. It was used by the Baladin family in the 1940s. In 1949, Newfoundland joined Confederation. Wartime scrimping and rationing were over, and people had more money to spend. The baby boom was in full swing. There was a spirit of optimism about the future. Life in rural areas got easier as farms were connected to the power grid, electricity. 1952, oil puts Fosterson on the map. A gusher of Fosterson near Swift Current was the beginning of an oil boom in the Southwest. Fosterson, #1, pumped its black gold for decades. 1952, George Garneau, 17-year-old Saskatoon schoolboy today, won the clay pigeon trap shooting championship at the Olympic Games. Garneau's brilliant performance gave Canada its first Olympic gold medal since 1936. He brought home Canada's only Olympic gold medal from the 1952 Helsinki Summer Games. Saskatchewan people celebrated Queen Elizabeth II's coronation. Newspapers were full of coronation stories and souvenir sales boomed. Communities went all out to celebrate. Yorkton held a contest for the best decorated porch, doorway, or window and put on a grandstand show based on the coronation theme. (1905 to 1955), we've got Saskatchewan's Golden Jubilee. Saskatchewan Homemaker's Kitchen, a cookbook compiled by homemakers clubs in honor of Saskatchewan's Golden Jubilee. Population in 1905 was 195,000, 1925, 828,000, and 1955, 880,000. In 1956, Dr. Humphrey Osmond, a doctor at the Saskatchewan Hospital in Weyburn, coined the word psychedelic. Osmond and his colleagues experimented with LSD and other mind-altering drugs to treat schizophrenia and alcoholism. Psychedelic, according to Osmond, meant mind manifesting. How do you like that? The word psychedelic came right out of Saskatchewan. 1957, John Diefenbaker became Canada's 13th Prime Minister, and Estevan became Saskatchewan's 9th city. The saga of the conquest of the Saskatchewan Territory, featuring Alan Ladd, Shelley Winters in Saskatchewan. The movie came out in 1957. Some fun stuff here from Living in the 50s. Keith said, a doll there. David Crockett book, Lone Ranger record. 1958, Lord Minister became Saskatchewan's 10th city, and Diefenbaker won big. John E. Diefenbaker, member of Parliament from Prince Albert and the leader of the Progressive Conservative Party, led his party to the largest election majority in Canadian history. 1958. 1959. 45 record here, and player. Queen Elizabeth Power Station. And in 1960, Melville became Saskatchewan's 11th city. And in that year, Canadian Bill of Rights, which is Diefenbaker's legacy. 1961, Woodrow Lloyd became Premier, and Saskatchewan women curlers bring home the championship. Saskatoon's Joyce McKee Brink won the first official Canadian Ladies Curling Championship, the Dominion. Life and Times in the 60s, Saskatchewan gets a provincial tartan. The new provincial tartan reflects the Saskatchewan colors. Ripened wheat, summer fallow, the western red lily, sunflower forest, snow, coal, and oil. Lester Mike Pearson became Prime Minister in 1963. Mr. Hockey shatters the Rockets records. Story started in Floral when Gordie Howe was born in 1928, continued in Saskatoon, where he got his first skates, a pair he shared with his sister. Howe went on to hockey stardom with the Detroit Red Wings of the NHL. His 545th NHL goal beat Maurice Rockert's record, 1963. 1964, Ross Thatcher became Prime Minister. Here we've got 1965, Time Jubilee items here. Fun and games in the 60s with Twist and Shout, the Beatles. Saskatchewan, Canada's Centennial, 1967. Saskatchewan celebrates the centennial. Has the largest earth-filled dam in Canada. Saskatchewan River Project was a dream that lasted a century. 5,000-meter Gardner Dam, one of the largest of its type in the world, opened on July 21st, 1967. Construction had taken nearly a decade. Over 100 years earlier, Captain John Palliser had proposed a dam on the South Saskatchewan River. The dam was named after James G. Gardner, former Saskatchewan Liberal Premier and Federal Minister of Agriculture. The park was named after Tommy Douglas, longtime Saskatchewan Premier, and the lake was named after former Progressive Conservative Prime Minister John G. Diefenbaker. 1968, touch-tone phones were introduced to Saskatchewan customers, replacing the rotary phone. And in that year, Premier Pierre Trudeau became Prime Minister. 69, Neil Armstrong set foot on the moon, one giant step for man, one giant leap for mankind, and a new flag flew over Saskatchewan. The green and gold flag unfurled on September 23, 1969, was the winnings design from some 4,000 contest entries. It was the province's first official flag. Province creates Indian and Métis branch, Canadian First. The Thatcher government promised help to First Nations people by offering educational opportunities. The agency created was first of its kind in Canada. A move begun to make school curriculum more relevant to Indian and Métis students. In 1971, Alan Blakeney became Premier. And the 40-hour week was first province Canada to introduce a 40-hour work week with time and a half for overtime. The 40-hour work week applied to both city and rural workers. For this, city workers put in 44 hours, rural workers 48. Remember the tie-dyed t-shirts, platform shoes, leisure suits, afro hairdos, pantsuits and hot pants? How about the disco age made popular by Saturday Night Fever? In Saskatchewan, as in the rest of Canada, we learned to think metric, kilograms, and meters, liters and degrees Celsius, kilometers and hectares. The venerable Eaton's no longer offered its mail-order catalog. Shopping malls and chain stores drew shoppers away from locally owned businesses, and credit cards encouraged spending. The exodus from Saskatchewan continues. People left for work in other parts of the country, especially Alberta. Growing numbers of people leaving the farm meant that for the first time, more people in Saskatchewan lived in urban areas than in the countryside. 1972. 1973, where there's smoke, there's cancer. Saskatchewan hospitals restricted smoking to designated areas. This was one of the first steps to control smoking in the province. In 2005, smoking was banned in all public places in Saskatchewan. Atari Pong, the first commercially successful video game, started a new trend. Canadian television, SCTV, Royal Canadian Air Force, and the Beachcombers drew big audience. Gordon Lightfoot told stories and ballads like Wreck Up the Edmund Fitzgerald. Saskatoon's Humphrey and the Hump Trucks entertained across Western Canada and beyond. Joni Mitchell's Clouds album was acclaimed on both sides of the border as her musical career took off. Be a Miracle Maker, 665, 1975. The Kinsman Foundation for the Handicapped presents Tell a Miracle. Kinsman Foundation, Tell a Miracle. Souvenir pins from the Tell a Miracle, which was a telethon, of course. 1978, Joe Clark became premier. And Sassy is the official mascot of the Western Canadian Games, being held in Saskatchewan. 1980, Pierre Trudeau returns as Prime Minister, and Melliford becomes Saskatchewan's 12th city. Once again, 1980 is the decade of the 80s with driest on the prairie since 1930s. In 1984 and 85, low snowfall and above average temperatures brought infestations of grasshoppers and grass fires to southern Saskatchewan. Northern Saskatchewan saw tent caterpillars and spruce budworts flourish in some areas as forests burned in others. 1982, Premier Grant Devine appointed Joan Duncan as Minister of Government Services. He also appointed Patricia Smith to cabinet. They were the first women appointed to cabinet in Saskatchewan. 1982 also saw a Cree speech in the legislature as Lawrence Yu, elected to the legislature by the voters of Cumberland constituency, made part of his maiden speech in 1982 in Cree. You can spin these to learn even more at the Western Development Museum. 1982, Grant Devine became premier, and farmers protest. In 1983, the farmers protest the end of the Crow. For 85 years, freight rates for hauling grain had been protected by the Crow's Nest Pass Agreement. Farmers defended the Crow against calls by the railways for higher rates. Vic Murray and his 1X Crow committee made large plywood cutouts in the shape of crows for farmers to sign in support of maintaining the Crow rate. Crows made it to Ottawa, where they attracted lots of attention on Parliament Hill. 1984, John Turner becomes Prime Minister, and quickly followed by Brian Mulroney in the same year. And 1984, the world's largest commercial optic network. Saskatchewan had the world's largest fiber optic network, over 3,200 kilometers of cable connected 52 Saskatchewan communities. Each strand of thin glass cable could carry 672 telephone conversations at once. Plant opened in Saskatchewan. Saskatoon 2 years earlier was Canada's first fiber optic manufacturing facility. Fun and games in the 80s. Remember the Cabbage Patch Kid craze? In the Canada Games, 1989, in Toronto, Saskatchewan Rough Riders faced the Hamilton Ticats. And Saskatchewan Rough Rider fans went wild as their beloved team won the Grey Cup, the second victory in the team's nearly 80-year history. Saskatoon hosted Canada's Summer Games. And the cellular telephone service was introduced. The network of transmission towers will grow quickly over the next few years, bringing cell phone service to a wide area of the province. That all started in 1989. In 1991, Roy Romano became premier. Life expectancy for both women and men in Saskatchewan was longer than anywhere else in Canada. 81.67 years for women and 75.31 for men. And Saskatoon hosted the World Junior Hockey Championships. Canada claimed top spot. In 1988, Saskatchewan's first woman lieutenant governor, born in Kenora, Sylvia Bedoruk, was named Saskatchewan's first female lieutenant governor in Canada. Once again, at the Western Development Museum in Moose Jaw, in their 100-year celebration area, with this great mural showing the history of the province. There are things you can spin to learn even more about facts about the province. 1993, Kim Campbell became premier, quickly followed by John Chrétien. Bigger hunt gets the big buck. A white-tailed deer shot by Milo Hansen on a bigger area farm sported a world record set of antlers, breaking a record set 80 years earlier. I have seen that buck. 1994, Scotty the T-Rex was discovered in southwest Saskatchewan. The residential school on the Gordon Reserve northeast of Regina closed. 1996. Closed for good. It was the last federally operated Indian residential school in Canada, separated from family, language, and culture. Many Aboriginal children suffered incredible hardship and abuse in government or church-run schools. Remember the 1990s with Titanic, the rollerblades, the Tide Buddy cars, and then life around the millennium. Sandra Schimmer's rink swept to victory in the first ever women's curling event at the Olympic Games in 1998. And Saskatoon's Katarina LeMay Doan won her first Olympic gold medal in speed skating. Nunavut became Canada's third territory in 1999. In the year 2000, the world celebrates the millennium, and Humboldt becomes Saskatchewan's 13th city. (2001) was a bad year on the farm. Drought, dust, heat, grasshoppers, and wind made crops in some parts of the province not worth harvesting. The January to May drought in Saskatoon area was worse even than the 1930s. Unfortunately, the next couple of years brought more of the same as farmers struggled to make ends meet. Many finally gave up. And Lauren Calvert became premier in 2001. Canada's hockey fans were ecstatic when both the women's and men's hockey teams skated to Olympic gold at Salt Lake City in 2002. Four Saskatchewan women, Haley Wickenheiser of Shavona, Colleen Sotoric of Kennedy, Kelly Bichard of Sedley, and Dana Antel of Saskatoon were part of the women's team. Oxbow's Theorn Fleury was on the men's. Saskatchewan Métis were recognized in 2002. The government of Saskatchewan proclaimed the Métis Act in recognition and celebration of the historic economic, cultural contributions that the Métis people have made to Saskatchewan and Canada. Hearts across Canada beat a little faster as Katrina LeMay Doan streaked towards a gold medal, finishing at the Winter Olympics. She then did a victory lap with a huge Canadian flag and a smaller Saskatchewan streaming out behind her. Canada in 2003, Paul Martin became Prime Minister. Regina celebrated 100 years. And Canada's first Aboriginal-run university opened, the First Nations University of Canada, which began as Saskatchewan Indian Federated College in 1976, was officially opened on the University of Regina campus. Then came 2002. 2005, Saskatchewan turned 100. And Prince Albert celebrated 100 years as a city, one of the oldest communities in Saskatchewan, founded by Reverend James Nisbet in 1866. Prince Albert became a town in 1885. Souvenir of Prince Albert's 100th anniversary. There you have it. 100 years of Saskatchewan. 1905 to 2005. I hope you've enjoyed this. I'll go live in another area later on. Agape!